The first sound came at night, a soft thud. It was subtle, almost like a whisper in the dark, easily overlooked in the stillness of the night. Easy to dismiss, just the house settling. Old houses have a way of speaking, their wooden bones creaking and groaning as they adjust to the cool night air. The old Victorian often creaked and groaned. It was part of its charm, a reminder of its long history and the many lives it had sheltered. But the thuds continued night after night, always from the attic. They were persistent, growing louder and more insistent with each passing evening. Sarah and David tried to ignore it. Old houses made noises. It was a mantra they repeated to themselves, a way to quell the rising tide of unease. It was to be expected. They had chosen this house for its character, its history. No old house was completely silent, yet a sliver of unease began to grow. The sounds weren't regular. They were unpredictable, coming at odd hours, breaking the silence in a way that felt almost intentional. Not like the rhythmic ticking of a house cooling down. These sounds had a weight to them, a presence that was hard to ignore. One night, a loud thump, like footsteps, heavy footsteps. They reverberated through the house, shaking the very foundation of their sense of security. David went to the attic door, his heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the heavy thuds from above. He put his ear against the wood. Silence. The kind of silence that feels thick, almost tangible, pressing in from all sides. He told himself it was his imagination, but the sounds persisted, growing louder, bolder. They seemed to mock his attempts to rationalize them away. Sarah and David couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something was up there, something unwanted. It was as if the house itself was trying to tell them something, a secret it had kept hidden for far too long. "It's probably just squirrels," David said, trying to convince himself as much as Sarah. "They get in sometimes." Sarah wasn't convinced. Squirrels didn't sound like that. The sounds were too heavy, too deliberate. "Maybe we should call an exterminator," she suggested, her voice tight with worry. David hesitated. Calling someone felt like admitting they were scared, like they were letting their imaginations run wild. "Let's give it a few more days," he said, "see if it stops." But the noises didn't stop. They intensified. Dragging sounds joined the thuds, scraping against the floorboards. It was becoming impossible to ignore. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. Sleep became difficult, haunted by the thought of something lurking above. Each creak of the house sent shivers down their spines. One evening, Sarah found a strange object on the attic stairs, a rusty hook. It wasn't something they owned. Panic welled up, choking her with its icy grip. That night, the noises reached a crescendo. Heavy thuds vibrated through the house. Furniture rattled. A blood-curdling scream echoed from the attic. Terror froze them in place. Their blood ran cold. This was no squirrel. This was something far more sinister. David grabbed a baseball bat, his hands slick with sweat. He crept towards the attic door, every nerve ending on high alert. He slowly pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The attic was dark, filled with an eerie silence. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of moonlight filtering through the grimy window. He took a tentative step inside, his heart pounding against his ribs. A floorboard creaked behind him. He whirled around, bat raised, but there was nothing there, just shadows playing tricks on his eyes. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he noticed something strange. A pile of blankets in the corner, and a faint, musty odor, like someone had been living there. Sarah stood at the bottom of the stairs, her breath catching in her throat. "David!" she whispered, her voice trembling. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall and gaunt, with wild eyes that glinted in the darkness. He was clutching a heavy book, his knuckles white. Sarah screamed. David spun around, raising the bat. The figure lunged. David swung the bat, connecting with a sickening thud. The figure crumpled to the floor. Sarah and David stood there, panting, their chests heaving. The book lay open on the floor, its pages filled with strange symbols and diagrams. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The man on the floor groaned. He wasn't dead. David called the police, his hands trembling as he dialed the number. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the man's pained moans and the distant hum of the city outside. David's mind raced, trying to piece together the events that had led to this moment. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, David and Sarah cautiously examined the attic. The air was thick with dust, and every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down their spines. They moved slowly, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The attic was filled with old forgotten items, each one a relic of a past long gone. Among the cobwebs and forgotten memories, they found old journals filled with rambling, incoherent entries. The pages were yellowed with age, and the ink had faded, but the desperation in the words was still palpable. Each entry seemed more frantic than the last, a descent into madness captured in ink. The man, the journals revealed, was named Elias. His handwriting was erratic, the letters slanting wildly across the pages. It was clear that Elias had been deeply troubled, his mind unraveling as he wrote. He claimed to be a descendant of the original owner of the house. The journals spoke of a grand estate, once a symbol of wealth and power, now a decaying relic. Elias believed that his lineage held a dark secret, one that had been passed down through generations. He believed the house held a dark secret, a hidden room that contained the key to ultimate power. This room, he wrote, was the source of his family's influence, a place where unimaginable forces could be harnessed. Elias's obsession with finding this room consumed him, driving him to the brink of insanity. The entries were filled with paranoia and obsession. Elias wrote of shadows that moved on their own, whispers that echoed through the halls at night. He was convinced that he was being watched, that unseen forces were conspiring against him. Elias wrote of being watched, hunted by forces he couldn't see. His fear was palpable, each word dripping with terror. He described the feeling of eyes on him, the sensation of being followed, even when he was alone. He believed the room held the key to protecting himself, to unleashing the power to fight back. Elias was convinced that if he could find the room, he could harness its power and turn the tables on his tormentors. This belief became his sole focus, driving him deeper into madness. As the sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah and David exchanged a chilling look. The weight of Elias's words hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within the house. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into the same web of fear and obsession that had ensnared Elias. Elias's ramblings seemed like the delusions of a madman. The more they read, the more they questioned his sanity. Yet there was something about his words, a kernel of truth buried beneath the madness that made them uneasy. But the terror in his eyes, the desperation in his voice, hinted at something more. Elias's fear was real, his desperation genuine. As they read his final entries, they couldn't help but wonder if there was more to his story, if the darkness he spoke of was still lurking, waiting to be discovered. The police arrived, their faces grim as they took in the scene. Elias, delirious and muttering, was taken away in an ambulance. The house buzzed with activity as the police investigated. One officer, a seasoned detective with tired eyes, questioned Sarah and David. He listened intently as they recounted the strange events, his expression unreadable. "Did he ever say what he was looking for?" the detective asked, his voice low. "This hidden room?" David shook his head. He just kept saying it was the key to everything, that it had to be protected. The detective's eyes narrowed. Protected from what? The investigation continued late into the night. The police found no evidence of a hidden room. Elias's ramblings seemed to be just that, ramblings. As dawn approached, weary and shaken, Sarah and David were left alone with their thoughts. The attic, now empty and silent, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something. David noticed something he hadn't seen before, a small, almost imperceptible crack in the wall, hidden behind a loose floorboard. He pried it open, revealing a small dark space. Inside he found a wooden box, its surface covered in intricate carvings. He brought it downstairs, his hands trembling with anticipation and dread. With bated breath, Sarah and David lifted the lid. The room was silent, the air thick with anticipation. They had been waiting for this moment, the culmination of weeks of searching and deciphering cryptic clues. Their hearts pounded in unison, a rhythm of fear and excitement. The box emitted a soft, ethereal glow. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a light that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The glow illuminated their faces, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a single object. It was as if the object had been waiting for them, preserved in perfect condition despite the passage of time. It was a tarnished silver key. The key looked ancient, its surface marred by the passage of countless years. Yet it held an undeniable allure, a promise of secrets yet to be uncovered, small and unassuming yet radiating an odd energy. The key seemed to hum with a power that was both intriguing and terrifying. It was as if the key itself was alive, aware of its own significance. As they stared at it, a cold draft swept through the house, extinguishing the lights and plunging them into darkness. The sudden chill made them shiver, and the darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the house. It wasn't Sarah's scream. It wasn't David's. It was a sound that seemed to come from the very walls, a cry of anguish and rage that sent chills down their spines. It was the sound of something ancient and evil, something that had been awakened. The presence in the house felt malevolent, a dark force that had been disturbed from its slumber. The key lay on the table, glowing ominously in the darkness. Its light was the only source of illumination, casting long, sinister shadows that danced on the walls. The house was silent, except for the sound of their own terrified breathing. What had Elias unleashed? The silence was oppressive, filled with the weight of unspoken fears and unanswered questions. And what would become of them now? They exchanged a glance, their eyes reflecting the same mix of fear and determination. They knew they had to find answers, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. The questions hung in the air, unanswered, each one a weight on their minds, a puzzle that demanded to be solved. They felt the gravity of their situation, the realization that their lives would never be the same. The attic's secret remained, a terrifying mystery that would forever haunt their waking moments and fuel their darkest nightmares. The key was just the beginning, a doorway to a world of unknown horrors and hidden truths.